have a lot of arts organization friends who don't have their own space. And so one of the ways we realized we could really help the artistic community is having subsidized rates for artists and arts organizations who don't have their own space.
And welcome back to the Broad Street Review podcast. I'm your host, Darnelle Radford. Today, I'm still in the virtual studio. I'm still trapped in here. It's actually pretty spacious, but I can't find a way out. However, I can always invite people in, which is always great. And so today, my guest is Nell Bang-Jensen, the CEO and producing director of Fringe Arts. And if you don't know Fringe Arts, where have you been? Fringe Arts, who just celebrated a successful 2025 Philly Fringe Festival. So we're gonna catch up with Nell as Nell is celebrating 1 year at Fringe Arts. Congratulations and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Darnelle. It's such a privilege to be here. And also, if I can take this just as a brief moment to thank you and the rest of the Broad Street Review. Arts coverage is few and far between these days. And I just really appreciate and emphasize also with your sleep deprivation during the festival for how busy you are covering so much of the work happening in our city. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. The team at Broad Street Review is amazing and diverse, and we're all over the place. I think it is so great. I actually look up and I see a lot of the coverage and conversation that's being had is through Broad Street Review. So yes, congratulations to the team.
Yeah, truly.
I want to say that it was a lot of fun running into you throughout the Fringe. And the whole time I was like, how are you making time for this? But then I'm so glad that you're able to make time for this. So as we're celebrating 1 year at Fringe Arts, let's get a year in review because you started, was it at the beginning or at the end of the 2024 Philly Fringe Festival?
That's right. Somewhere in between. I did, what was called a soft start in that I sort of started doing some hours for Fringe Arts during the festival last year, but it was complicated by the fact I was actually directing a show for the festival. It was Shot by Lightning Rod special. So I was doing that, wrapping up my really enjoyable 5.5 years at Theater Horizon and then starting at Fringe and went full time, a year ago today, October 15th at the festival. So, yeah.
Yeah. So 5.5 years, you said?
Yeah,
Yeah.
at Theater Horizon.
So I know we're always looking for opportunities to extend our reach and grow artistically, creatively, and so on. But was it hard to leave Theater Horizon?
Oh my gosh, so hard. We're getting right in. Is an incredible place. It still is. I think my dear Talia Robinson, who's over there as the artistic executive director now and has been part of that team for years, is going to do phenomenal things. And it's a really special place, made more special by its location in Norristown, part of the theater community, but also really taking this community-centric approach in Norristown. And it was a true joy to get to lead that work there. The Philly Fringe has had a very special place in my heart for years. I mean, when I graduated college, it was one of the reasons I stuck around. I made a show, with my college friends in the festival, and that was over 15 years ago at this point. And so it's very full circle to me to be at the Fringe now because I had been a participating artist in it, both, registering my own shows, but then also part of the presented section for a really long time off and on. And really my friends are people who would float around the Fringe. They're my collaborators, my friends. Met my husband here. I mean, Fringe is sort of dangerously close to my personal life, actually, if that is now my job. So I just had a real passion for the organization. And increasingly, I just love that Philly is a home for new work and experimental work. And Fringe is really the place where I can do that. So that's been a real gift and sort of felt like a calling, especially in these moments where there's fewer and fewer places and residencies devoted to the development of new work. I know the Capitol Fringe closed last year in DC. Space at Ryder Farm, that residency program just shut down. So I think the Philly Fringe is actually becoming even more important nationally and really codifying Philly as a place for new work creation and experiments. And it's really exciting to be part of that. And, depressing when we consider the state at large, but exciting to be a home for it and part of shaping the Philadelphia artistic ecosystem.
Yeah. It's been pretty apparent that there are many artists who in August are at the Edinburgh International Festival, and then they are in Fringe Arts.
Yeah,
So it's pretty cool to see that this is one, like if you're thinking about a circuit, because I don't know that everybody realizes that there's a ton of fringe festivals. Some of them aren't, producing, but there are a huge lists all over the world.
there are,
And
yeah. It's
to have
interesting,
those two being
we've been
such
digging
a
up some
draw.
data. Oh, sorry to cut you off, some data on that. I'm just, like, so interested in what you said. 'Cause we were curious too, and it really in terms of, like, which is the biggest and all of this, it depends how you count. Like, do you count in terms of number of shows? Do you count in terms of number of venues? But in terms of
Mm,
number of venues, Philadelphia is the biggest in the United States. Rochester is close behind us, and in fact, some years have more shows, but it's really exciting that we get to have that title, and I think it's really a testament, to fringe arts, but also to just the artistic community here. I think this year, just anecdotally, it felt like we had more artists coming to Philly specifically to be in the festival. For better or worse, I think with fewer opportunities around the country, people are coming to us. And there's so many companies in Philly over the past 30 years or so who have made it a home for new work. And I think people really see that.
yeah. It makes it hard to consider going to another city because you're thinking about like this big festival's here though, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, and it's a festival, and I think, the ecosystem among artists it creates, like, I remember 15 years ago taking a workshop with Andrew Signet at Artist U, who, has all these opportunities to help artists make this their professional lives and think about their own worth and value and the balance of day jobs and, all of that, and then the number of people 15 or 20 years older than me who were willing to grab a coffee with me when I decided to, kind of stick around here and try to make a life in arts. And I think that kind of informal generational mentorship has really continued in Philly and is a core part of who we are.
Yeah. And I think, in the past years, the festival was really helpful in terms of like educating new producers on how to produce a show, like how to
Yeah.
promote the show and how to present yourself in the best light.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been doing more and more artist workshops. We had a bunch, I think 22 actually between April and the festival, all free to artists and technicians. So we actually had a partnership with Philadelphia Scenic Works to do some more technically oriented workshops, everything from paper mache props to lighting your show based on equipment you can just get from Lowe's or Home Depot and how that could work, QLab, and then also workshops geared towards the artists participating in the festival from everything from budgeting to PR. We just had a producers panel on touring your show as well. And those have been really popular and feel like a core part of what we do and, you know, trying to help people level up. And really, there's so much great work that happens here. And how do we help their shows have a longer life if that's what they desire or tour to other places so that we can be one step in a piece's development?
Absolutely. I feel like many of the organizations are really focused on let's create a space for you to develop this work and bring this work forward and yeah, their name does sort of carry along with it as well. And it does show that this is an organization that you can go to if you're developing work, not just it's got to be pristine and perfect, it's got to be ready to go. I think a lot of shows that I saw in the festival, they explained where they are in their journey. There were also a lot of great readings that had multiple opportunities to see it where they were still working on the piece, which I thought was very smart to use the festival to, prioritize developing this new work.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one thing we're looking at just in kind of our strategic planning process, our funding process, and all of this. Because I personally was an artist who really, I think, has benefited from the fringe arts ecosystem. How can we do that more for artists who are emerging now, especially because the landscape, I would say is much harder for an artist graduating college right now than maybe ever before. And so we're really thinking about how can we meet artists at every stage of their career and applying for funds to start new residency programs and begin more initiatives like that so that we're really investing in the artists who are making the show and not just the show after it's already been created. We're trying to kind of flip that model through a long, painstaking fundraising process, but no day like
The
today.
fundraising never ends, never
Yeah,
ends.
that's right.
So let us in on your day. Let us know what is a normal day for Nell at Fringe Arts.
Wow, that's such a good question. Well, before I even get here, I have to get 2 little kids off to daycare, and so my day starts there. It's definitely informed by how drop-off goes, but my partner, Justin, and I actually really try to prioritize doing drop-off together because I have so many evening and weekend commitments working in the arts. So we do that, and then I come here, and, my day is mostly meetings, to be honest. It's not terribly exciting, but, the thing I do like, especially during the festival, is I often don't know what's gonna end up needing to be the priority of the day until I get there and start those meetings. So I would say a typical day, it might begin. I do a lot of like 10 a.m. coffees. And so having coffee with an artist who wants to talk about their show or a development process, I might start there. I might then have an internal meeting about fundraising or staff structure or a rental coming up. Really regular meetings with our bar and restaurant partners too, which is a whole other side of Fringe Arts. I might get lunch with a donor we're trying to cultivate. Then usually the afternoon tends to be, yeah, more of that, more internal meetings. And then usually I'm seeing something in the evening, whether it's a works in progress showing or a show at some of Philly's other amazing arts organizations. So that's kind of a typical day. It's pretty all in, but I really love it. And every day feels very different from the one before.
Yeah. I know it is consuming to be, focused on the organization all day and being in the theater community, it is sort of part of our responsibility to go out and support the art as well. Would you say that you do get out enough to, get a good variety of Philly theater in?
It's such a good question. I mean, frankly, probably no. I wish that could be more and more of my time. There's some evenings where I have to make a hard choice of going to see something or working on preparing a budget for a committee meeting. And so, putting my daughters to bed. So it's like these are all crazy choices we all have to make. And I think with 353 shows in the festival, I hate that I can't see them all. I think our staff actually did a really great job, especially this year, of being out and about where we could. And it's important for us to, I think, see the work by artists we're familiar with, and even more important to see the artists whose work we're not. So I did try to find that balance in terms of, going to the work of people who have become friends, and also going to the work of people I don't know. And so that's always the balance. But yeah, I could see something every night of the year and still not see all the work happening in Philly, I think.
Are the artists super excited to see that you have attended their show?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I try to be discreet, honestly. I don't know. No one's actually ever really said anything about it to me. I will say, like, people can always send invites to me, to the rest of our programming team and artistic staff, like Simon, Michaela. The more lead time, the better. Like, sometimes people are like, "Come to my reading tonight," and I'm like, "Ah," but, really, I do try to prioritize it with lead time.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about the 2025 Philly Fringe Festival.
Yeah.
As you said, over 300, was it 350
There ended up
productions?
being 353 shows.
And on top of that, there were also sort of cancellations in the mix too. So there
Yes.
would have been more.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. There's always shows added, even mid-festival, and shows taken away. In this case, we definitely struggled with some artist visas for international artists, with municipal codes at the Wanamaker building. So there were a few hiccups for sure. And I think in many ways that's to be expected just with a festival of this scale, and also working in non-traditional spaces and the political conditions of 2025. So I think all of those factored into the festival. One thing I'm really proud of is we actually had about an increase of about 5,000 tickets sold this year compared to 2024. We had around 35,000 tickets sold. We also 17% of that increase were unique ticket buyers. So it means that it's not just the same people buying tickets to more shows. It's actually that there's new people finding the festival. And that's, yeah, 17 it was a 17% increase. So that is huge to me, just in terms of showing people are hungry for this work. They're willing to take risks for us and experiment. And that is such a gift. I think especially coming out of the pandemic, being an arts organization, that's not true everywhere, that especially there are just young people who are hungry and ready for the work. And we're seeing that in the data of the festival. And again, I think that's just a testament to the artists involved more than anything else. But that was probably the most exciting standout from the festival for me.
Yeah. How many people make up your front of house, like your box office? Because I
Gosh.
think the work that your team did in terms of like how the like know before you go emails were set up, the after emails that were encouraging us to vote, and just their presence in general. I felt like every time I saw them, I was like, I just want to let you know you guys are doing a wonderful job. Great job, everybody. Whoever else you see, please let them know that some guy came up to the box office and said, what a wonderful job you guys did.
Thanks so much. That's such good feedback to hear. Yeah, it's huge. I mean, once you factor in, so Fringe Arts full-time staff, we have a team of 11, but then we definitely add about 10 positions for the festival. And then there's a whole slew of volunteers who we couldn't do it without. And it's quite moving to me that there are volunteers who have done this for the festival for over 20 years sometimes. They just really believe in the work that's happening and in Philly artists, and it's deeply moving to me. So thank you. That's great feedback.
And so one of the events, first of all, were you able to see all of the curated events?
I'm going through, yes, I was. Yeah.
Great. Sometimes think that that might be a little confusing for everybody. Can you talk about the difference between the curated and the neighborhood festivals?
Yeah. It's so tricky, and I think just a really interesting organizational question that I've been thinking deeply about since coming on, and also since before I came on, just being an artist in the community. The way it's structured right now, there's anywhere from 6 to a dozen shows that is in our curated or presented series. Usually anywhere from a third to a half of them are by Philly artists, and then the rest are by international or other national groups. And that's because the idea is that the festival is sort of where the world meets Philly and Philly meets the world. And this year we tried to do more cross pollination between those groups. So every artist who was in the presented or curated did either an open rehearsal or a workshop or a class for and with Philly artists to try to encourage that point of dialogue. And that was really exciting. And I think we can go even deeper into that in the future as part of this residency program and other things. It's tricky because whenever you have a curated or presented lineup, we don't want to take away from also the spotlight on everyone else registering in the festival. And we've heard from an audience perspective, they want us to like even narrow down the focus even more, that the festival is too big and overwhelming. So there's this interesting thing where I think for artists, especially Philly artists, it can be challenging to feel like, I mean, Chris Davis did a show about it, right? That some artists are presented and some artists are not. And it's a way of us basically saying, here are the resources we're able to put in this time around. And from the audience perspective, they're sort of like, select more. And so that's just a constant tension. And I think something we're constantly thinking about and trying to figure out how we can do the right thing for all parties. That's a little bit impossible. But yeah, right now there is this curator presented section, and then anyone who wants to, it's an open access unjuried platform, can register to make a show in the festival as well.
So there were 6 hubs altogether?
Belief.
5? Well, I think I hear that there's so much going on that it's hard to keep track. But I think, what is interesting about the festival is that it's multidisciplinary. And so normally you're thinking about like, what theater shows am I going to see? But also you're like, wait, there's dance, there's improv,
Yeah.
there's, spoken word, there's digital, there's so many options. But the thing I love about the hubs is that they are in neighborhoods. And if
Yeah.
you already live in that neighborhood, perhaps you could take the guesswork out and just
Yeah.
see what's happening at the hub.
Completely. And I think, that's another area just strategically and kind of long term organizational thinking where we're trying to grow is really, I completely agree with you. I think the hubs are our strength moving forward. And there were some really obviously Cannonball is the first and oldest and biggest hub. It does amazing work. And I think there were some newcomers this year that were hugely successful, like identifying Studio 34 in West Philly as a hub. I think there are people who live in that neighborhood who came to a bunch of shows who hadn't engaged in the festival before, but they came because it was 3 blocks from their house and they take yoga there, right? And all of a sudden they were like, wait, what's happening here? Um, Dumb Hub, I think, was another great example. Really clear theme, like really clear mission. They took over the Pig Iron Studios and had silly, stupid clown work. And I mean that in like the best compliment, actually. It was everything I saw there was phenomenal. So I completely agree. I think themed hubs potentially, or even just um, defining theme as geography in some cases, right, can be a great audience builder as well.
I think I also think it's great that it does seem like the community reserves space for the Fringe. Like, for instance, us at Theater Exile, we tend to reserve September for Fringe bookings so that there are enough venues for artists to perform in. And I've just been seeing that grow more, along with, a show that's already on that stage, but just being a part of the festival's programming as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I mean, it's this amazing thing, and this all happened before I got here, so I can take no credit, that I feel like September in Philadelphia, people have kind of been trained that, like, it's Fringe time, and so audiences do engage in a different way. I think they're ready for the marathon, and the artist community too thinks, "Oh, okay," it can be good motivation to create something. It's a deadline, and that can be quite helpful, I think, to figure out that there's a set time in the calendar every year where you can try something new.
Can we talk about the layaway?
Sure.
It was a great idea, and I was able to go to one of the previews. It
Good.
was a beautiful setup. It was beautiful collection of performances, but everyone didn't have the opportunity to see it. And can you talk about what happened?
Yeah, so we got through our first weekend of performances and some previews, and then we're notified. We were there really through a partnership with Opera Philadelphia, who had a partnership with the new building developers there. So there are many partners, and then the shows by the Bearded Lady is another partner. So, but basically, we learned that we had gotten the permitting to do the show and everything. We thought it was signed, sealed, and delivered, and then there was an inspection where they found that some elements of the building were not up to municipal codes, and they actually revoked our permit to do the show there. So it was really heartbreaking, to be honest. We were on the phone, and this was one of those, like, I don't know where my day is going to go before it happens, because I was just having a lot of calls into the city in Harrisburg and trying to get people to. There was not a safety concern. It really was a matter of coding and the building. I think even the building owners and developers were very surprised. They thought things were up to code, and it turned out Macy's was really out of date on a lot of things. And so I think there was a lot of good faith efforts to try to get things fixed. Now they have been, and the opera is able to continue with their Pipe Up series, but we sort of were, unfortunately, the guinea pigs for using that building as a performance space, and it did end in heartbreak. And I feel badly for us, but most especially badly for the Bearded Ladies and all of the incredible work that their team put in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they did a beautiful job sort of recapping what they were able to do in the space and the messaging around the cancellation and all that. It was all love, and feel like everyone in the comments was just in full support of
Yeah.
the fact that the effort was even attempted, and everyone who had the opportunity to see it, just grateful that
Yeah.
they were able to be in that space. And it's so iconic. We were talking about, if anybody remembers Mannequin, you know,
Yeah.
was filmed in that space. And then you think about how many companies have been in there, which I think it is part of the layaway when they ask, like, do you know about Hex? Do you know about Strawbridges? Do you know about Lord and Taylor? Like, all these places have been in that space around the iconic Eagle.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
exactly.
yeah. It was
Yeah, and
just
I'll say it was really disappointing, and I think is inherently a risk when you're trying to do performance in non-traditional spaces, and I think that is really central to our mission. Like, we don't wanna stop using found spaces as venues during the Fringe Festival, and we did have the proper permitting and all of that in this case. So I think it was both a lesson learned, and I think does not deter us in terms of taking this kind of risk in the future. I think we did learn some lessons along the way, but it's a risk with non-traditional spaces, and that's why it's always easier to just do things in theaters, but that's not really what Fringe is about. So, yeah.
yeah. Well, I'm glad the effort was made, and don't stop.
Thank you.
Because I think those spaces are the most memorable too, because it's not a traditional theater space, and you can actually see all of the effort that went into, bringing the presentation to life, and so there's so
Yeah.
much value in that.
Yeah.
Thinking about the festival as you've been here as a spectator, as you've been here as a participant, but now you're here running it. Just thinking about the way Edinburgh, the city of Edinburgh, completely commits to the festival. Do you think Philadelphia is ready for that kind of commitment? Or do you think we could ever get there?
I mean, it's government funding, really, and tourism dollars. In my, the little fraction of time I've had over the past year, I've been trying to do more advocacy work because of that. Because I think, the city of Edinburgh helps the festival, and in turn, the festival helps the city. And I think Philly could be that model. Fringe Arts actually currently gets $0 from the city of Philadelphia. And that's something, I went to an arts rally last year, with you and a bunch of other arts leaders to try to change that. And it does sound like there will be more funding in this year's budget that could get distributed to us. It's all a little hazy at this point. But I think it's also about a quarter of our audiences actually do come from outside of Philly to shows. And so in terms of tourism dollars, we're doing a lot for the city. The artists in Philadelphia are doing a lot for the city in terms of contributing to the economic engine. Do I think Philly is ready to support the festival in the way that Edinburgh has? They're not ready, but they should be. And I think that is a big project for myself and for other arts and culture leaders over the next few years.
Yeah, we need to have long talks with Visit Philly
Great.
and the Visitor Center
Great.
and the
I mean, I will say
Culture Alliance.
I'm encouraged about the work, Val Gay is doing as the new chief cultural officer. I think having more arts and culture focused people there can only help. Rue Landau's office has been incredibly supportive. I think she's the only city council person with an arts and culture staff member on her team, which is amazing. So I think there's small positive signs that the city is recognizing what the arts and culture does for it. And I know it's a city that has always struggled with resources, and perhaps putting resources in the places where, at least you and I, as completely unbiased theater makers, think they should go.
Absolutely. So let's look into this season and let's look at the Feastival.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell us about the Feastival.
Yeah. So Feastival is Fringe Arts' annual fundraiser. So it's a great way to support the work we do and the work of the festival, where we say, the performing arts scene meets the culinary scene in Philly. They have the central focus of experimentation and risk, which is really fun. This year it's a week from today, on October 22nd. We actually shared a discount code with Broad Street Review readers, which is
Yes,
exciting.
it'll be in the show notes of this
Awesome.
episode.
Cool. We have 22 participating bars and actually, I think we're up to 25 if we count bars too. Bars and restaurants participating. And then Brian Sanders is doing some performance with his company Junk, Seven Textures, and then also Eric Thomas, the playwright and advice columnist. He's doing a Spill the Tea booth where you get prescribed different cocktails depending on your woes.
I saw that and I love that. So excited.
And I think Eric and I are having too much fun. I think that will be a blast. And it's an immersive event. I think it's a really fun fundraiser because there's no sit-down dinner. You kind of just wander around, and there's different pop-up booths with different amazing things for you to try. This year, our co-hosts are Michael Ferrari, who's the chef at Bach, and Kiki Aranita, who runs Poi Dog and is a writer for The Inquirer. And they've been great at kind of drumming up the fringe arts and the culinary community of Philly.
Sounds like a tasty event.
It will be. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. I might have to take advantage of that promo code and
Yeah.
be there. Yeah, that is so exciting, and I'm so glad all of these artists are participating in that, and that the bars and restaurants understand that being involved in this supports and strengthens the fringe arts. So that's so great.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And, Feastival started in 2010 and has been on and off since. And really, the success of it is due to the hard work of many, many people well before me. But it's exciting to kind of rekindle it this year.
Absolutely. So talk about throughout the year, Fringe Arts is still presenting work. And so tell me how that happens. Is it planned so far in advance or does it come up kind of as it does?
Both. I'll say this is kind of fun because this can be the soft launch for a new season model we're exploring. We used to sort of do these mini festivals throughout the year, a comedy festival, circus festival. We're moving away a little bit from that model to do more it's going to look, I think, more like a regular season to people outside of Fringe. And really part of that is because that keeps happening organically. Actually, we have a lot of arts organization friends who don't have their own space. And so one of the ways we realized we could really help the artistic community is having subsidized rates for artists and arts organizations who don't have their own space. So, Fringe Arts, of course, has to rely on rental income often for our bottom line. But when we can, we like to support other arts organizations by using our space. So we had some kind of pilot program, some trials in this last year with Ninth Planet presenting their show here, and also Team Sunshine. And I think that's some of what we want to do more of, is do a couple pieces that we might be bringing in from other places, like we do with the festival, but also a couple pieces where it's artists and collectives approaching us saying, hey, we have, this much we can put on space, but we can't have labor. Can you help us out? That we can kind of try to arrive at something that feels mutually beneficial to both organizations, and then also put kind of our marketing support, being at an institution can give your work visibility. So kind of those also more implicit benefits. So, and sometimes that is planned a year in advance. And sometimes it's an artist coming to us saying, I have this piece I'm trying to get off the ground. This other venue fell through. And us trying to see if it's possible.
Yeah, great ideas. We're all relying on rental income, which is always so interesting. Like when I think about it, it's at the same time we secured these facilities so that we could usher in more art. And so, making the space available when we're not using it is a great opportunity, but it's become more of a need because we have an endless well of creative ideas, but it's the infrastructure that everybody doesn't have. There's a lot of companies started with a couple of friends in college or, getting out of college thinking like, what do I want to do? I want to make something. And then like, perhaps you get some seed money from your family and, you build it from somewhere, but it starts as an entity before it ever becomes a destination in terms of like a facility. And then once you have that facility, it's a challenge to prioritize the art, knowing you have to maintain the facility as well. And so finding that delicate balance is always so important. And I would just encourage all of us to share more of that information because I think it's just as valuable to see the behind the scenes information of a production you're about to see, knowing the work that went into it, like some inside baseball that maybe piques your curiosity when you're sitting in the theater, but also understanding like this building came together, through sweat equity.
Yes, completely. I think that's absolutely right. And trying to find those events that can be a balance for us. Like we brought back scratch nights last year that were really fun. And, this kind of space sharing program we're trying to start. Yeah, really trying to think how can our building be the true asset that it is in terms of helping the artist community, because it also comes with all these operational costs, as you were saying. So that's the trade off. That's the balance. And yeah, figuring out how we can do better at that every day.
It is a great space too, and in a great location. I feel like so much energy was created when that building opened, and then you got the pier right across the street, and so on. And so it must be alive there at night. Every time we go there, we're also like, this is here, right? Oh, I don't always think about Fringe Bar as a place to go to dine out because we cross the entire city to get over there.
Yes.
But once we get over there, we're like, yeah, I'm so glad that people find this too, and, this is somebody's haunt, you know, the Fringe Bar, and I think that that's exciting.
It is. It is. It's actually, I mean, one of the things the bar does, just because they have pretty robust nightlife and events, they brought in a different clientele, I would say, than typically goes to see a piece of theater at an arts organization. And that's really amazing for us, is that people can kind of make friends with the space and then feel welcome at our shows instead of it always happening the other way around. And so that's been a really interesting and great audience builder for us too, and just new way of making relationships. People sometimes come for food before they come for art. And so that's a nice gateway.
Yeah. So what's coming up next at Fringe Arts?
Yeah. I mean, Feastival is the big next thing a week from today. So I'll shout that out. I'll also say, there's some interesting educational opportunities coming up. Specifically, Mason Rosenthal is doing a class called Make Show. That's really all about people who have an idea. Making a show, like what is that artistic process, from his pig iron training and devising perspective. And I think that should be really, really fun and great for artists who are thinking participating in Fringe in the future.
Great. And I have that listed, and we'll have a link to that in the show notes as well.
Awesome.
So I ask every organization this, and so I'll ask you, what does Fringe Arts need in terms of opportunities and from the community?
It's a great question. A few things. I think first, let's talk about the artist community, because I feel like that's probably a portion of your readership, which is, I think we need to know what people want and need. So, Simon just sent out an artist survey, for example, from the festival about we're looking at redesigning the format of scratch nights, or how could we really help artists who have works in progress? Again, how can our building be an asset? And genuinely, we want to know because we want to design programs around it. Same with this potential residency program. So I think it's one thing to see organizational decisions and then have feelings and opinions about it. And I always do about other organizations and did about Fringe before I got here, right? But it's another to actually say, hey, I have this idea. Will you talk about? Like, I have a rule: I get coffee with anyone. And partially because I love coffee, but also just because I feel like, again, it's important to creating this ecosystem. So I think that's what we need. If you have an opinion about how, what we could be doing, how we could be doing it, no guarantees it's possible, but I will always have a coffee to talk about it. So we'll say that. And then, I'll also say, I think in 2025, I mean, there's just so many challenges we all know. I don't even need to mention it, but it is a time where I think trying to raise awareness that the work of the arts is actually political and directly connected to working against an authoritarian regime is really, really important. And I think that gets lost sometimes when people are putting more attention, rightly so, on social services and political causes. The money sort of goes away for the art itself, whereas I would argue the art is actually doing all those things too. And I think we've seen some of those shifts with foundations. And so we need support, I think, for the work of the festival and of Fringe Arts, from a broader group of humans, and to really do that advocacy work and tell that story.
Do you think there's room for another month-long festival in Philadelphia?
I mean, I think there's so much artistic work happening in the city. Yes. And I think, I don't think we have to be the be all end all of festivals. I think we do a thing, right? We do a thing. I don't think we have to be the only people doing that thing. But I also think, I see the work that Fringe has done over the past 29 years, and I know it went deep and long and has really brought in a lot of audiences and artists. And I think that work just takes time and trust building. So yeah, yes and no, I guess. But I don't think I think there's so much great work happening in Philly. I don't think we have to be the people who, are the only people leading that cause. And okay, here's what I will say. I think Philly sometimes does a thing where it starts new things instead of investing in the things that it has.
Yeah, yes, I agree
And
with that statement.
yeah, I think it's very Philly. And so I would encourage everybody before starting something new to say, how can we make sure this other organization, individual, whatever it is, can actually be moving in better alignment with its community, with its audience, with whatever it is, rather than disbanding and starting something new altogether?
Do you think there's funding for strengthening? Because it often seems like the funding wants something new and exciting. And, sometimes you have to sacrifice what isn't firing on all cylinders to bring in something new. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
I think if I'm coming from a finance committee meeting today, so what I hear in that is like, it's very easy to fund the sexy new project, right? Whether it's a show or initiative, and much harder to get money for our staff's health insurance. Like we're looking at switching dental plans for Fringe Arts in 2026, and it's going to impact our bottom line, right? And it's like we don't have a funder right now who's willing to give to our staff dental plans. If anyone is, let us know. But it is really challenging because that is the work or the humans involved in Fringe, whether they're volunteers, doing house management like you were talking about, or whether there are staff members or the artists who we want to increase their artist fees and be more equitable about it. So the money to sustain what we do is much harder than inventing new things. Yeah. And I think you're right. I think that is part of why, in some ways, inventing something totally new is easier than strengthening what we already have.
I like to thank the Lenfest Institute for its commitment to our dental care.
I
They
know.
can't put their name on it, you know?
I know. Exactly. Exactly.
Well, the reason I asked that is because the energy of the festival in September is something I feel like could bookend our season. If we had
Mm,
something equally exciting to sign off our season. Now, our theaters have produced some awesome shows for their last show of the season, and it kind of feels like that. It does feel like in June we have to get to everything that's on stage. because, everybody brought their A game. But I just feel like perhaps a festival of some sort, maybe not of the same capacity in terms of like how many productions, but to create that energy of there's several things I'm going to, and I'm excited about these things. They're in development. They might be part of next season. It could potentially, there could be a festival that's a tease
Yeah.
of what the next season might bring.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, I think there's tons of possibilities, and again, like, I think we're not the be all end all of, the whole ecosystem, so I think there's definitely room for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was great having this chat with you, kind of unpacking. Congratulations on 1 year on the books at Fringe Arts.
Thank you.
You've been here with these successful festivals and knowing that all the stuff that's going on in the landscape that is challenging for the arts, that the excitement and the resilience of Fringe Arts, I think just inspires us and gets us ready to get through a season. And we start thinking about like, what else can I see? I saw so many shows, like even for myself, like in terms of coverage, it covered eight I covered 8 productions, for the festival, and that was all in September, and usually I do, like, 2 to 4 shows, you know,
Wow.
bits in a month, but there were too many shows I couldn't pass up. I was like, "This is an interesting conversation. This is an interesting conversation," and Chris Davis, of course.
Yeah.
I feel like I can't it hasn't been a year if I haven't interviewed Chris Davis.
Yeah, that's right. No, he is a fringe institution. And a big part, I mean, one of the things I really appreciate about Chris is he shows up for every happy hour that we do so that he can meet other artists participating in the festival or people from out of town to try to kind of give them a Philly welcome. And that's a huge part of what I think we need to be doing. So yeah, I really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
absolutely. We need more people like Chris. Hi, Chris.
Yeah, totally.
Yes. So thank you for taking this time to chat with me about all things Fringe Arts. You'll look at the show notes, everyone, for that Feastival promo code. You should definitely go because not only are you going to eat like kings and queens, you are also going to support Fringe Arts and the many efforts that they have going on throughout the year. Nell Bang-Jensen, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. It was truly a pleasure.
Thank you. For me too, Darnell. Thanks for doing the work that you do.